basically there's kind of two contrasting sides to how people are thinking these days, it seems. And we are, as a society, trying to push people into one of two categories. And the first is you're more or less uninvolved from the things around you. At the very least, that's how the other party would see it. Basically, both parties are painting the other party in a certain light. The one party is painting the other as uninvolved, and the uninvolved party is painting the other party as fearful and terrified. And the real sad truth of it is that it's a relatively accurate description, um, to say that for the most part, people who are uninvolved, obviously, because they're just not paying any attention at all, they are going home and watching children's cartoons, going to bed, waking up, and going to work in the morning. They are completely unaware of what's going on around them. And there's the other side that is doing nothing but devoting all of their free time to finding out what's going on around them, but all it's causing them to do is to frenzy themselves into a state of fear and panic. So I think that um, our group has definitely not found ourselves falling into these two categories, mostly because we keep pulling ourselves, like we keep pulling each other out of it. But I kind of wanted to talk about what the general philosophy that we as a group have adopted and how we've managed to the best of our ability, not fall into those two tribes or either of those two tribes. And I figure while we're at it, we might explain a little bit of kind of the MacGyver philosophy in our prepping group, in our like kind of groups that we are in, because that I feel kind of goes into why we are not in the fear category, nor are we in the uninvolved category. Hayden, you and I were talking earlier about the prepper shows. Now, where do you think those prepper shows folk would fall into in our two categories here?
Oh, they are fearful people.
Right.
They saw one thing and they were like, "Man, I don't like that." So then now they live in fear of that thing happening. Solar flares. I think economy collapse is one of the ideas. I remember one of the zombie apocalypse. He was a kid though.
I mean, zombie apocalypse is pretty rational. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I can
You're
see
not.
that happening. I can.
Yeah, I mean we have that
I'm,
in San Francisco.
yeah, I was about to say, bro, we're already there, dude. There's pretty well the brain dead people running around all over the place now, in there.
Oh yeah, but yeah, they fall in the fear, and because of the fear, they prep so hard to avoid their fear.
I feel like at this point, the word prepper has almost become synonymous with being part of that fear group. I mean, do you guys both feel like that's kind of an accurate way of putting it?
That's where it's gone, definitely, and there's reason for that because I mean we'll meet people occasionally that have definitely started to lean that way, and a lot of people even just visiting the store that have said that just hearing the word prepper almost made them not come in, but they were glad they did. Prepper has become such a negative term in and of itself just because some of the most loud preppers are the most scared.
And it's not even like specifically too, I think part of it is that they're not just scared, but they are scared to a point of irrationality.
Oh yeah. I mean, some of it even gets to a point where they're hoarding one specific facet of actual prepping because of one fear, and that hoarding just leads to more and more.
I mean, it's unhealthy.
Yeah,
That's the end point. It's just it becomes more and more unhealthy for them, and
paranoia. That's the word I was looking for. More
their
paranoia.
discomfort that they've created through making such a chaotic and messy environment causes them to deep dive further into the mental unhealthiness that's causing them to do that. So
Yeah, so like I think of preppers, I think kind of on the far spectrum of they're kind of crazy nut jobs these days. And like they live in fear, they preach a lot of radicalism and of like the government's bad or this and that, or like the world's gonna end type deal. Doomsdays. And like they just everyone else who lives in regular life are like, that's you can stick to your little cave and we'll keep living, walking away, but then their cave just becomes a little really loud echo box, and so then anyone else who gets pinned under the prepper terminology phrase, they are associated with this loud boombox cave of fearful people. And so I would say, honestly, the newer term of prepper is a homesteader, because there's YouTubers and all that who they homestead in cities or here and there, and pretty much the same. They do the same stuff as preppers, but it's called homesteading, and it doesn't have any negative terminology with it or feelings with that word or phrase or title. And so, yeah, it's preppers. They kind of shot themselves in the foot with their name.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the term preppers was necessarily always a bad thing. It just kind of became
No.
that because of what that group was embodying for the most part.
I think a large part of that, which I don't think we've really touched on as well, is while in some cases this is very important to have, is the distrust in authority. Like in some cases that's a very important thing to have because it can help you deal with situations in the world that you live in, but that almost hatred for authority that's grown in that community also throws people off quite a bit, because that also makes you feel it makes people feel uncomfortable because they don't know how far you're willing to push that hatred for authority.
I agree. I think that the dislike of authority, though, it's reasonable. It can be reasonably grounded.
Like I said, it can be very important to have. I am all for trust but verify, personally. Like, keep an eye on authority, but don't immediately hate them because they are authority.
This is fair. It's just to kind of defend that mentality to a certain extent, though. The issue is that organisms that are made up of people, it's only natural to assume that the organism is embodied in the person and the person in the organism, such that
Right.
if I have a negative experience with one person from one organism, I then begin to assume that any person who is part of that organism is going to be similarly tempered to the person that I have experience with from that organism. And it's not necessarily an irrational methodology of thinking, mind you, because it's if I meet a bunch of cultists and they behave, if I've met three of them and the three behave the same way, it stands to reason the fourth will behave the same.
Of course.
And thus, when I meet a person in a uniform and I've met three that behave in a certain manner, it's if the fourth behaves in a different way, I don't consider the fourth's behavior to be a result of them being part of the mechanism or part of that group. I assume that their behavior is due to outside circumstances that are because of who they are as a person, not because of who they are as part of that organism. So it's a difficult line to draw because especially when you're dealing with an organism that has the capacity and power to potentially um, remove everything from you, strip you of everything, even if you haven't done anything. And
Yeah.
that's the kinds of stories that you know, I mean, me personally, as well as some others, are very well acquainted with. And that's part of the distrust of authority of a prepper. That's part of where it comes from. It's because we see these people who are part of organisms and we see behaviors, and then we begin to come to conclusions about how those people are those who are from that organism. And I mean, me personally, I tend to think of things in the classification of individuals and organisms, but it's difficult to draw the line between where is it that this person is beginning to act as themselves versus where is it that this person is acting upon how they are as part of this organism.
Yeah. And that's valid. Those are all like valid concerns. I just think that some people take it a little too far.
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, and I mean that to be fair, that's also the reason why people think poorly of preppers.
Yeah.
They've met three preppers who are crazy, and the fourth prepper comes along and isn't crazy, and they go, well, it's not because preppers aren't crazy, it's because this individual isn't crazy, and they aren't really a prepper, they just happen to be part of the prepper organism, right?
Right. They're not crazy, therefore they must not be a prepper. Is kind of
Right.
where things have gone.
But now I think now by properly explaining it in both directions, hopefully if a person who kind of sees themselves a bit more as a prepper is listening to this podcast, they can kind of see how they've come to certain conclusions and how other people have come to conclusions about them. It's that we as humans have a pretty deep issue between drawing lines as to where the individual begins and the organism of which they are a part ends. And it's a difficult line to draw, to be fair, because we as individuals operating in our own capacity will often use the organism of which we are a part to justify our behaviors, regardless of whether or not they are behaviors that the organism is tied to. Most especially when the organism is as loose as a thing as the idea of being a prepper.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I think on this spectrum of the fearful versus the uninvolved, you're about as centered as it gets. And I feel like there's some people who'd probably disagree with that sentiment that I'm saying you're centered if they were to meet you. But you are not by any means caught up on news by and large. You're not spending all that much time catching up with the news. But at the same time, if I needed someone to show me how to do pretty much any function in the woods, any function in farming or homesteading, I feel like you would be the guy to call. So I feel like as far as centrists go in this particular topic, you'd be the guy. How do you think you've ridden that line center?
Well, the best way I found to ride this middle line is one, I live out in the country, which just puts you automatically right in that. And then two, I could kind of just thank my family. See, my dad's side, they're all farmers, big farmers, so that's where I learned a lot of the farming. Mom's side's all about hunting, so that's where I picked up the hunting and the fishing. And then to avoid a lot of the other problems, I just have somehow I cornered myself into not really watching TV or seeing a lot of the new ads and all the watching the news. Don't do it. And so I kind of pick up news through like random, like third, fourth party people, and so it's really good. It's really well filtered, and I normally just ignore it anyways. That's how I kind of stay in the middle of being somewhat able to prep and up to date, and also not.
And I mean, I've had quite a few discussions with your dad. He tends to have a pretty far outreaching kind of process where he tends to say, yeah, but that's not really going to matter in 10 years.
Yeah, and I've kind of picked up that as well. I mean, you think about a current problem and you're like, well, it's probably going to be gone within the next few years, or it'll be rendered pointless to worry about soon. And so instead of spending all my time grinding my gears and just trying to overcome the problem, I just kind of overcome it when I need to, and then just kind of let it fizzle itself out. Plus, if you keep like your head on your shoulders and you just kind of think about things instead of running in with emotions, is kind of what I do. Or half the time I like to sit back and just let things play out for a little longer to really see what's going on. That's my favorite thing to do. Instead of jumping straight to it when it first comes up, just sit back, watch it. Just let it unfold to get a clearer picture. It's what I like to do.
Good method. And it keeps you from acting on half information or on an incomplete picture.
Yeah, well, it keeps me from getting caught with my pants down, as I like to say. Because you're ready to act, but you just don't until you can really know where to act at. I mean, if you act in the wrong spot, you act a fool. And I prefer not to act a fool on accident. I act a fool on purpose. It's on purpose because I act a fool. There's a difference. There is a
That's a
difference.
good way to do that. That's a good way to do that. It keeps you from being brash as well, which I think is very important because some people they act too quickly. And sometimes being able to act quickly is a very good thing, but sometimes you can really just ruin a lot of things for yourself if you act too quickly because you can act a fool while still technically getting the job done, but then wind up making other things more difficult in the future.
Oh, I do that at work every day. I act too quickly. I forget a tool, and then I have to either work without this tool or I have to go and get the tool. And now I look like an idiot either way. So, like, I still do it. I mean, not gonna lie, but like when it comes to the bigger world problems, I sit back and I just kind of watch. At halftime, when you watch it unfold, it unfolds itself right back to where it came from, and then you don't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah.
Also, I say avoid soundbox, or I call them sound boxes, but it's pretty much when everyone in the same room does the same thing. I like to avoid those. That
Find
point, it's just
people with differing opinions.
yes, because then you
That
get a wider. Because then it's actually you can talk. They'll talk back. It's not they don't agree with you constantly. They don't just yes man. I like that because I it's the same thing that I like.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm the purveyor of echo chambers. I live in. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That's what they're called, right? Echo
Yeah,
chambers.
echo chambers. Yeah, yeah.
I know they're called, so I call them sound box for some reason. Close enough. I mean,
Soundbox has also been used.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
heard
No,
people
sound
use
boxes. Yeah.
Soundbox multiple times. That is not an incorrect term. It's just not the common term.
Now, Dean, I feel like you are until recently more on the uninvolved side. Do you feel like that's an unfair characterization, I should say?
As far as the prepping side, absolutely. I was very on the fence about all of it. I watched and I had ideas about what I'll need if things happened, but I mean even still, even being a part of it and as I've, reached step 1 in prepping, uh I I still am of the opinion that a lot of it can lead to a pessimism I don't necessarily like, so I have to go at it very carefully, so I'm doing it very slowly. But I am very new to it. And before then, I was very politically involved, but I wasn't socially involved.
Yeah.
I would study the politics, and I was very aware for a very long time of the goings on in politics. I mean, I'm the reason my family votes the way they do. I'm I'm the reason some of my friends vote the way they do. I've leaned a specific way for a very long time, but I never took the step into preparing for what happens if all of it goes wrong.
I think it's a little bit of a different step, but and then again too, it's like this is where we kind of come into the characterization is not in fact how it goes, where that person who's not prepping, the preppers want to go and be like, oh, they're just an uninvolved weed smoking hippie. Well,
Right.
you weren't uninvolved. You were involved in politics. You paid attention to these things. You were watching the news. It's just that you weren't necessarily, stacking up freeze dried food in your home, right?
Yeah, and up until recently, I was of the opinion that a lot of those things that people prepare for can be avoided so long as we actually utilize the republic that we live in.
And I think that's a very reasonable perspective to have, where it's like if we're gonna fight this issue, let's fight it in the way with the tools that we have right now in the way that we can right now. Also, you are a perfect example of you're not a brain dead idiot. You never were a brain dead idiot. You just weren't, again, you weren't stacking
Yeah.
freeze dried food, right?
I mean, I play the part of the brain dead idiot sometimes, but overall I try not to be. Um a big thing that took me a long time to get around is because I did the same thing a lot of people do is I lumped preppers all into kind of a specific group. I don't necessarily like doomsdayers. I like preppers now that I know more of them and I'm more involved in that side of the culture in the U.S. I like preppers a lot. I don't like doomsdayers. It's only the end of the world if we let it be. And I think we as individuals are also a huge part of where that goes if things do go down, because saving humans as a whole is going to be a fairly easy job because we tend to be like cockroaches. We've gone through a lot.
We tend to make
We've gone through a lot throughout history, and we as an entire species have lasted longer than just about everything else.
Now, you said, step one, getting to one. You said something like that earlier. Do you want to kind of unpack that? Because we've talked about it a little bit during kind of our private meetings for how we
Yeah.
view these things.
So something that me and William were talking about even just today was like, what, 1 to 5 steps?
0 to 5, 0 to 5.
0 to 5, 0 to 5.
Yep.
And William made the very good point where some people, they almost don't get prepared because they don't feel like getting into it late can be prepared enough. But he made the awesome point that stepping from 0 to 1 is an infinitesimal improvement. That it's borderline incalculable just how much of an improvement you've made just going and doing one thing, getting one thing. You're already better than you were the day before. And I think a lot of people get hung up on, well, I should already be at 5 because I'm at this age. But any day that you decide to start preparing for something that you believe to be a genuine threat and a very viable option for where things could go, as soon as you've taken the first step into preparing for that, you're already better than you were yesterday, and you don't need to get hung up on that. It's very good to go, I mean, baby steps, right?
Yeah.
One foot in front of the other. Don't spend, a couple grand and break your bank because you're like, I'm not prepared enough. Because then you've just hurt yourself in the long run if things don't go down.
And that's too where I feel like our company and like even this podcast in particular, this episode, I really hope that we can catch people who they're hanging out on that ledge, that like terror ledge where they're really, really afraid of things that are about to come or that they foresee that are about to come. This reality that they've kind of conjured in their head of the future.
And
I would really like to be able to talk those people off that ledge because like we had a couple that was at an event that we did recently where they come up and they were 55 to 65. They're older couple. Not like super old, but older. And they're telling me that they've only maybe a month ago gotten interested in these sorts of things. And what I told them was, first things first, good on you for having the humility to admit I wasn't paying attention to this when I was younger and maybe I should have been. Second, just because you think that the world will end tomorrow doesn't mean it will. And anything is better than nothing if the world does end tomorrow. And if the world doesn't end tomorrow and you drained all of your 401k into investing under the assumption that it will, you will be very disappointed.
yeah.
If you want to approach this rationally, and that's that center line that we need to be writing, I see prepping effectively like how I see my investments. It is something that I allocate a certain portion of my funds into for the purpose of if the future goes in a way in a certain direction, I am prepared for that directionality. And these are things that I will use regardless. If I go and get freeze-dried food and it's good tasting freeze-dried food that I'm gonna enjoy eating while I'm out camping anyways, then I just have extra camping food. And if I have 2 months worth of canned food in my shelves that I'm cycling through and using it as ingredients and stuff I'm making anyways, then I'm just, buying things that I'm going to be using anyways. But if I drop everything and spend half of my life savings on some nuclear fallout shelter, and there's never a nuclear fallout, boy, won't there be egg on my face, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be like your ultimate man cave?
I mean, it would be a pretty sick man cave, actually. Maybe that's the next thing we should do. We should all pull our little resources together and get ourselves a nuclear fallout man cave.
Because then,
I'm
like,
here
it
for that.
serves two purposes. I mean, if there's a nuclear war, we can be safe. If not, we have a great place to go drink.
Yes, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no wrong.
LAN party, baby.
Yes. Post-apocalyptic land party. We're actually playing Fallout 4 in our nuclear shelter. Hey, you guys want to have a fishing story?
We probably should.
Yeah, I'm down for a fishing story.
All right, let's go hear a fishing story.
This one time at band camp.
And now it's time for Fishing Stories with Hayden, the part of the podcast where Hayden comes out and tells you fishing stories.
So, a couple years ago, since I'm always busy, I couldn't go last year, but the water levels they get low enough, and the Platte River was shallow, so me and my brother went to go walk the Platte River. And I mean, the Platte's not a big river. I won't say it's a small river either, but it has a lot of sandbars, and so you'd stand out there in the middle of the river, and it's about to your ankles in water. And so we go out there and we're fishing and catching little channel cat, blue cat, some carp because we're using night crawlers. I caught a gar first time. It was about 2 feet long. I was a wimp taking it off the hook. I did not want to get bit. I can grab a channel cat, not even worry about getting fins. Bluegill, crappie, their fins won't me. Gar, their teeth scare me for some reason. Don't know why. It's probably because I don't deal with them enough. But let's see. We put out at this place called Union Mill. Walk down. We found the rock ledge, and we're like, it's getting late. We'll walk our way back up. Well, before we did that, my brother, he caught a snake, broke his line because the snake wedged itself in the rocks, and he just kept yanking on it, not even trying to get the hook out of the snake's mouth. So he lost his hook and had to retie, and it was late enough. We're like, oh, we'll start walking, so we're not in the middle of a river when it's dark out. And we get to the top hole where we came in at, and there's a young couple, and they came down to fish as well. But the guy, I don't know what stupid he was on, because I'm sitting there and I hear kabloosh. I'm like, is this man throwing rocks in the river? No, he is using 12-ounce weights. Here's the thing: I'm using a quarter-ounce weight, and my line is not moving. Okay, quarter of an ounce. This man's using a 12-ounce weight. I mean, they're cannonballs. Okay, you can put them in a cannon, fire them at a ship, and it will take down a mast. And then he grabs his lady's rod. He slings it out there too. And there's two things. One, he put them in the terrible spots. I don't know where he's trying to fish, not the hole. And two, he's using cannonball weights. I go, you probably scared every fish here. Though his only saving grace is the water's so low they can only go so far. Anyways, I caught a couple more carp. Harry, I think, caught some small catfish, and we had a gar at that point and a keeper catfish. Well, turns out the gar broke its jaw and ripped itself off the metal stringer we had it on. We only had the catfish, so we gave it to the young couple and left. End of the story, but like, I don't know what this man was fishing. Fishing Missouri River when it's in high flood mode with 12-ounce weights, whatever. Platte River, a small to medium river, when it has a trickle of water, dumb.
So we've talked about two different types of preppers: beginner newbies like me, who are fairly well informed and have followed politics for a while and news for a very long time very closely. We've talked about homesteaders like Hayden, people who are very well prepared but aren't necessarily focused on the everyday news stories that people panic about. Now, not to put you on blast or anything, we still have one more to talk about.
The fear addicts.
Yep, fear addicts, people that kind of get sucked into the hysteria, people that get sucked into even some of the conspiracy theories and stuff like that. I know for a long time.
Hey everybody, my name is William, and I'm a fear addict.
Hi, William.
I'm a recovering fear addict.
Recovering, yep.
Yeah,
He's
keyword.
got his first coin, all right.
Yeah. My sponsor's very proud of me.
Yep.
It's been a full few years since I watched Fox News, man. Yeah.
But all that being said, you and I grew up together. That's not really a secret. We've
No,
known each
yeah,
other
no.
for quite some time. And I got to listen to a lot of your hysteria and manic ramblings
Yeah,
growing up that were very entertaining.
yeah. Now I just manic ramble about other things.
Exactly, but a lot of those manic ramblings, once you decipher them, are actually very intellectual.
At some point, some level, maybe.
But explain kind of the thought process of the people that get sucked into the fear of it and get sucked into the like almost mainstream side of prepping.
Oh, geez, Rick, I'm real scared.
Exactly.
That's about it. I mean, so we were talking about this when the episode kind of opened up. I don't know whether or not we'll cut that, but basically what happens is one of three things. I was kind of that secret fourth option, but one of three things occurs. Something happens to you, something happens in your environment, or you have been sold on something that is going to happen in the imminent future. And it's something horrible, and it's something that affects you in some level, and it causes you to not want to have that feeling, that dread again. And then you'll do pretty much anything to not have that dread again. That is kind of how you get into the fear tunnel. You see this a lot on those prepper shows, and I was one of those people for sure. Skis. I think for me personally, it wasn't that something happened in my environment, and it's not necessarily that I had something happen to me personally. It's that I was sold on a future where something bad was going to happen, and I was so engrossed in the environment that I kept getting sold on a new imminent future that was about to happen that was bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was a teenager. I was a kid, literally. I mean, I still am kind of a kid for a lot of our audience. I'm 25, so I'm a child still. But I I've definitely grown a lot since then. I mean, when I was like 13, I think I was carrying around a literal like 35-pound bug out bag on my back everywhere I went constantly. It did not leave me. I was always with it, and when I went to school, I would have anxiety about not having it on me. Um, yeah, I I I was full send, pretty nervous about things to come. I think that's probably the best way to kind of articulate it. But
You were the weird
the
kid.
issue. What's up? Go for it.
You were the weird kid in school.
Oh, 1000%, dude. I was told so many wild things in school. When some of my old schoolmates found that I bought a prepper store as an adult, they were like, "Yeah, that checks. There's absolutely nothing about that that surprises any of us."
Yeah. I mean, it was a fairly unsurprising thing to happen given background.
Yeah, when I told some of my friends that I bought a property that was like out in the middle of nowhere and it was like a decent amount of land that I was going to be planting stuff on, they were like, "Yeah, it checks. Like everything about this checks." Yeah, no, there's no curveballs here at all. Um, and the school that we went to, sorry, school, but it's been years, so I think I've passed the statute of limitations. I totally carried a knife on me every day.
Oh,
Um,
same.
Yeah, no, like I always had a knife on me. I had a little tin that I carried because back then the little survival tins were like the thing. And so when I wasn't allowed to have that bag after a while, I started kind of like making this tin. And then the tin was like my lifeline, effectively. Like I just had that little bad boy. And that thing stayed with me. I mean, heck, until I was like 2 years into college. I carried that on me every day. And for the record, I used it probably 3 times a week. Like, I broke into that thing often, and I was carrying on me my everyday carry, and I was, like, religious about this everyday carry, um, because, like, these were the things that I needed, and I need to always have them on me. Not to say that I've, like, fully lost those kind of tendencies, but they've adapted to be a little bit less manic and a little bit more intentional. Where it's kind of changed for me as I've evolved as a person, as my kind of preparedness has evolved. Um, it's not a manic ritual anymore. It's not like a ritualistic thing that I have to do in order to leave the home. It's become more of just a, well, I'm going to go do X thing. I should have a certain there's a certain number of things that I just kind of always want to have on me. It's far reduced from what it used to be because I'm far more comfortable with my skill set now and I have far less need for as many tools. And for the tools that I do have on me, I tend to tailor it to the day. If I'm going to go out and do something that is requiring more tools, I might bring more with me. But more often than not, those tools have become attached to the things that are going to require them. So, I have a lot of things for working on my car in my car. To be fair, I drive really crummy old cars, and so they break down a lot. So that's come in pretty handy for me. But I'm not carrying a socket set in my pockets, for example, is effectively what I'm trying to say. Whereas there was a time where I did, and it was heavy and annoying and obnoxious, and I don't really see a need for that anymore. I've started trying to develop my kind of methodologies into ecosystems and have things be more purpose driven. So instead of it just being like, well, I should carry this thing on me because I should, and I should be prepared, and being part of being prepared is having this thing on me. I go, what is the reasonable circumstance that I'm going to run into that's going to require this thing from me? And is there any reason why I can't just find that tool in the environment that I happen to be in? Because if I can reasonably find the tool, then I don't necessarily need to carry it on me. But if it's going to be something that I absolutely need, then I'm going to absolutely need
Right.
it. So it's just, you know,
Yeah.
if you're getting to a point in your life where it's like, if I don't have these manic things on me that I have to semi-religiously use and keep on my person, if I don't run my hand over the seatbelt 3 times a day, right? If I don't, this is OCD behaviors. We need to not be like this, right? We as the prepper community, and not everyone in the community is like this, but that's the kind of people that were pointed out years ago, and that's the kind of people that everyone's kind of picturing when they picture us. So, don't be that person unless it's time to be that person. When Hey folks, I'm back. We had to chop
It's,
out that little section there because
yeah,
I
piss them off.
said some things that um, no place on the internet really allows these days. So they were removed. So if there was a harsh cut in there, I'm sorry. But I ran down a path that is not allowed. Like I named some things that shall not be named, and I said the name that shall not be spoken aloud, etc. So, anyways, overlords aside. Now that we've chopped that part out, um, yeah, I think at this point preppers have kind of evolved, and I think me as a person I have evolved, and me as a prepper has evolved. This isn't a manic routine for me that I use to comfort myself. This is something that I approach as I have tools. If they're not being used constantly, or if they're not being used with some level of repetition, then why do I have them? I need to be purpose driven, and I need the things that are driving, like the purposes that I'm driving towards, to be reasonable ones that have been proven in my life to be useful. And then there's the things that you buy that are toys, but that's kind of different. You buy the digital $50 night vision toy because it's a $50 night vision toy and it's nifty and it's novel and it's cool. It's nothing to do with my preparedness. It's just kind of a dorky little toy. But there's other things that I get that are much more serious that aren't toys that I just, I incurred that expense because there's a purpose behind it and I wanted to have it.
How did you break the cycle? You've become a enhanced version of it. You still have some of the residual remaining fears, but more of the more practical ones. How did you get out of hopping on the bandwagon with a lot of the common hysteria that goes around?
So I'm going to answer this for myself, and then I'm going to try to give a little bit more broad spectrum answer. For me personally, I was looking at the things. Again, I said this earlier. I'm 25. It's currently 2024. I've lived through 3 end of the world scenarios, apparently, at least, and maybe
Yeah.
5. I don't even know. I've been sold so many end of the world scenarios. I was told in 2012 that the Mayan calendar had predicted the world was going to be donezo. By the time that I was 8 or something, everyone was kind of over the Y2K thing, but I'd been told about it. And I'd been told about how horrible Y2K was and how everyone was thinking the world was going to end because, the computers weren't going to function or whatever. And I've seen, the event that shall not be named and all these other things. And I've come to realize they were all nothing.
One question.
And, yep.
Did you really sip the Kool-Aid for the Mayan calendar at 2012?
I did not, but boy, did I think it would have been awesome. It sounded so cool. Everyone was so worried. There were actual people who were actually worried. And I was like, man, wouldn't it just be cool? Wouldn't it just be super nifty?
I kind of thought for a second there that you did, and I was going to make fun of you for it.
That was the year that I was carrying around that bag all the time, though. I'm pretty sure it was 2012.
So you didn't finish your Kool-Aid, but you definitely took a sip. So that's why.
Yeah, I took a little taste. That stated, the more kind of generally applicable way of looking at this is people got one of 2 things that they need to kind of address. One is they're stuck on an old thing that happened, and they're trying to address it. And the second is they're just kind of riding the newest trend. If you're riding the newest trend, you need to think in your life earnestly, how many of these have occurred? How many of them were real? And the counter argument to that that's very common is, well, the next one might be real. And this is true. And that's why we do a little bit of preparation with the anticipation that maybe the next one might be real, but we don't bet the farm on it. For the people that are stuck on an old event, that's probably a lot harder to solve, kind of the mental block that is. My biggest thing on that is you gotta bear in mind, it's an old thing. It already occurred. You can't change it. And yes, it's good to be prepared in the future, but what will happen is that these folks who are struggling with that, they focus a lot on the physical things and not a lot on the mental things. I'd say do your very best to kind of really assess your situation and go, haven't I gotten enough physical things? And if the answer is yes, which it probably is, because a lot of those people that are stuck on something, they're still stuck on Y2K. They're still stuck on something that happened 20, 30 years ago. And it's time to kind of look around and go, I've got 600 gallons of water ready to go. I've got all this extra stuff. I've got stuff. Maybe it's time I start looking after my mental wellness right here and now, because those who are mentally well will have a much higher chance of surviving. Period. Not just surviving some apocalypse scenario, living longer, having a healthier life. Mentally healthy is good.
True, but if that stuff is guns, then you can never go wrong with getting more stuff, aka guns.
I mean, more boomsticks is always a good option. I mean, that's not my official prescription. I did just do like a mental wellness announcement there, but I will say
And
I too am a gun autist. I too am inflicted with the gun autism.
A touch of
he
the
is.
tism.
Remember, for mental health, if you just say it be like that and then just don't think about things like I do, by God, life is so much nicer. If you go home, here's a really good tip on how to not have a bad mental health. Don't watch the news. Any news
I
station. Just don't
mean,
watch it.
that's
And then
probably
by
true.
God, life gets so much brighter. Like if you go on Facebook, instead of like posting mean comments, just don't. Like just scroll on Facebook, like, oh look at that, your classmate, she got engaged, or she's pregnant, or he got a job. Good for them. And then you just leave it at that.
I
My mental health through the roof. Mentally strong over here with the tism.
I don't even touch any social medias anymore. I absolutely hate it. And it's really fun for me too because I'll go places and see people and they because everyone else is on social media, they expect you to be caught up on their lives. And I
Yeah.
force people to then do the healthier thing and sit there and give me an update on their life since I last saw them. And a lot of my friends who are people who are on the social media always updating other people, they like really enjoy sitting there and going like, "Oh, wait a second, you don't know that I did this thing." And they get to have the actual achievement feeling that they should have had that they robbed themselves of by like talking about it on social media because they finally have a person they can just tell their accomplishments to that isn't that hasn't already known about them because a lot of times you'll do these things, you'll go somewhere, you'll see some friend, you'll go, "Oh, by the way, I did this," and they go, "Oh, I know, yeah, I saw it on your Facebook or whatever."
Right.
I've told my wife and some of my friends too. It's like I please do not post this on social media. Don't I do not rob me of the experience of telling someone else this in person because
And
you're robbing the sweetness of my victories from me.
that is why I've created an alternate Facebook account just to do that.
Just to post your victories on.
No, your victories.
Have a whole list of fake friends. Oh, okay, I gotcha. I gotcha. Thanks for
Yeah,
telling me.
turn it up.
That explains so much, dude.
Remember, I don't post anything of myself on my Facebook or any socials. So,
Yeah.
like, you might not know I achieved something, and it's actually on purpose if I don't tell you or not.
I mean, that's pretty much what I do. I don't post anything at all. Period.
Yeah, but I post it for other people just to rob them of that experience. Like
Yeah,
me,
he
spam.
does actually. When I run into anyone and they go, "Oh, I saw you posted on Facebook," I go, "What? What are you talking about?" And they show me this fake Facebook that you created. You evil dastard. You evil doer. Vile, twisted, mustachioed man. You.
I suppose if I were to wrap it up, I mean wrap up with like the three facets of Pepper. Yeah, if we were to wrap up the archetypes, I guess I'd have one more question. Um, what is something that you're glad to have kept from when you were in that more negative mindset? Something that you brought out of it with you that has helped you in the long run?
Knowledge. Knowledge is what I got out of it. That I got to walk away with from that kind of manic, and it was manic energy. It's knowledge. That was the most worthwhile thing that I got out of it. I think before we jump into the next section, I think we might want to go into our ad. All right, Dean. This week we've been cooking up a few things in the products. From what I've been seeing, we've been looking at some bug out bags. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so these are a bug out bag brought to you originally from the folks at Midwest Preparedness Project, specifically Bobby Spags, who is once again bringing back the legendary Spag Bag, now in collaboration with us over at Riverside Survival Supply. If you have questions or are interested in it, be prepared, watch the YouTube channel. We plan on doing a full video on it. We have added some new things, making the version 4 of the Spag Bag.
So you're telling me this is an exclusive?
This is, in fact, a Riverside Survival exclusive.
Nice.
Speaking of Riverside Survival exclusives, you've been cooking up something on the plate department. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so now we're doing body armor yet again. I know that we dropped off for a while, but we brought it back, and we're starting with 3A. We'll be working our way right up the chain until we hit 4. But right now we offer 2 bundles. We do the 3A civilian style light rig, and we're doing a heavier body armor setup for security departments.
Now, that security rig, is that just available to only security folks, or can anybody buy it and we just labeled it the security rig?
That is available for everyone. We do not sell anything exclusively to any group. We don't really play the game that way. So if you are interested in protecting yourself, if you are a protector and a provider, feel free to come on in and check out our vests. And we are more than happy to let you try them on, feel them out, see what fits you best and what's going to work the best for you. And with what level of armor and with that weight and everything else is going to work best for your risk assessment.
And if you want to know exactly when those are going to be in the store, keep an eye on our Instagram and our Facebook. We will be putting posts up once they're back in the store. And we look forward to seeing folks in.
Yeah, and for all this, folks, supplies are here while they are here. We are locking in lower prices, so we try to get these things in larger quantities, for us at least, and then we have them until we don't. So come on in, check us out, and grab a bug out bag and a ballistic plates. Come in, check us out. It's a great time, and if it's just not for you, at least you know in person and it's there. And if not, we are working on our website. We hoping to have that up soon. So thank you for checking us out, and thanks for listening through the whole ad read.
Enjoy the podcast.
All right, so it seems that during the ad break we may have lost Dean. I think his internet is down. But there was one last subject I kind of wanted to cover. Hayden, you and I have talked about this a little bit during our owner meetings as to kind of how we see ourselves in this sphere. But we addressed it earlier, the 0 to 5 kind of methodology of looking at people's preparedness. Do you have any thoughts on this before we jump into it?
So I remember for our owners meetings, we were essentially saying how we were trying to be the center of the spider web of all these communities. That way they're all connected and they could all, communicate. And we're just doing our part to connect the strings or connect the dots, however you want to call it, and get everyone connected, everyone online, because of the bigger and stronger the community, the better. The more help and aid it can actually give itself, if it's actually because it can afford it. If I remember correct.
So
And then,
community was one of our key aspects that we established, where that 0 to 5 was kind of more for the individual, but you're nailing kind of a key workaround that goes into the subject generally. So basically, also welcome back, Dean. Basically,
Hi.
0 to 5 is the individual's preparedness, right? If you have a strong community, you do not have to be at level 5 preparedness in all aspects, because your neighbor will be prepared to a different aspect to a higher level. So you can intertrade between you and your community. So you did hit the nail on the head with kind of where we were talking about how to develop our local area as a whole, from where it was to hopefully a 5 in preparedness. And Dean was talking about this earlier, but this was something we'd also brought up in that meeting, is that the difference between 0 and 1 is infinite. And I was trying to come up with a good way to kind of demonstrate this, but it's like, I've heard the number thrown around a lot. If something horrible happens, there's a good chance that about 80% of the population isn't going to make it for the first 2 weeks. So those first 2 weeks, 80% of the population just gonzo. And kind of to demonstrate this, for where we're kind of slicing this. If you are at 0, your chances of being that 80%, that group of people who get just gone, is not 100%, but it's up there. It's coming on 100%. And once you get to 1, your chances of being that 80% are much lower. Significantly lower. Because you're going from I mean, probably a 95% chance, which means, okay, just to put this in context, if you have 100 people at level 0 preparedness, 95 of them get wiped out in the first week. To demonstrate this in kind of a more tangible means, we have an inverse lottery, and there's 100 people, and it's an inverse lottery. You can buy up to 5 tickets. A large portion of people have decided they won't buy a ticket at all because they don't believe in the lottery. The people who don't buy a ticket will get eliminated because they didn't participate. They don't have a ticket. There's always the chance that someone else will give you their winning ticket because they got 2, or the chance that someone who got a winning ticket drops it and you picks it up, but it's exceedingly rare that that will happen. So more likely than not, if you didn't buy a ticket, you're out of here. Level 5 preparedness, again, with our kind of way of looking at this with the kind of inverse lottery, you bought 5 tickets, right? I mean, not even necessarily an inverse lottery, it's just that the punishment for losing the lottery is pretty significant. When you didn't, the people who didn't buy a ticket, they lost, they're gone, they're donezo. You bought 5. Maybe all 5 are losers, and you're still part of that 80% of people who get wiped out. But it's much, much, much better chances that you'll be one of the winners because you have 5 tickets. That's stated. If you just have 1 ticket, you're in an infinitely better position than the people who have 0 tickets. Because unlike them, you have a chance instead of essentially no chance. Our goal as a company, and in our training that we've been doing, and a lot of the things that we're trying to push out as far as like podcasts and material, is to get people from 0 to 1. So we can help people get from 1 to 5. And it's not that we are against getting people from 1 to 5. It's that a lot of the material that we'll be pushing out is to make that statistic where people, or even I believe it was the government itself that published the statistic specifically when they were talking about EMPs. They said 80% of the population would die out in the first few weeks. We would like to see that statistic improve such that it's not 80% that die out in the first 2 weeks. It's maybe 20%. That's a long-reaching goal, but I think that at the very least, getting people prepared enough that it would be a far smaller number would be good. Where this kind of goes into the fear versus the uninvolved is some people, when they are preparing, they've already hit a level 5 preparedness in a certain area, but they keep delving deeper into that area in spite of the fact that their rewards for delving deeper are effectively nothing. And you hit the nail on the head, Hayden. Community is how you solve that problem, right? And that's where we were talking again about community, where it's like it doesn't only fill the gaps, it also helps people pull them out of that nosedive that they get into, where they're just dumping more resources into something that they've already effectively mastered, or at the very least, they've already effectively conquered to the point that it can be.
He's absolutely right on just the whole lottery analogy. It makes sense because that's what preparedness really is a lottery. But it's a lottery you kind of hope
Never happens.
to not have to cash in on.
Yeah.
You hope they never pull the numbers. And I think that's something as well that we try to bring to the community through our store, because I think a lot of people get caught up on these numbers are going to be pulled no matter what. So we need to be prepared. And that's where the sphere folks come in. And I hope I'm not derailing too much, but I hope as well that we see people kind of become more comfortable with what could be, but plan for but live in what is and plan for what could be, instead of always expecting your number to be pulled.
We have to live in the reality that is right now and understand that there may be a reality later. And we have to both be prepared for the reality that may come later while not sacrificing the reality as it is now. At least not sacrificing it so much that the reality that is now is a miserable one. because we don't know about the reality that may be later. We simply know that there is a reality now that we can live in. And that's not to say, eat and drink and for tomorrow we shall die. That's at first horribly pulled out of context. And anyways, you shouldn't do that. But you also shouldn't abandon today for the sake of tomorrow. Because tomorrow isn't promised and you have absolutely no clue what tomorrow will be like. Any thoughts on that, Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it real well. I mean, to be fair, you're the one who sipped the Kool-Aid first a long time ago. You got it.
Yeah, I did.
I'm not gonna lie. You took ahead. You took
I went deep in it, man. I think that's why events like Midwest Preparedness Project are super nifty for me, because it's a lot of people who are not interested. They're interested in just being people. They're interested in living life and in investing in things that are good regardless of how things go. And it's a collection of the crunchy people that just don't want to eat processed foods, and the people who are like, my guns, and the people who are, they're sick of being afraid. They just want to grow their own food and hang out and, just have a good time. And the people who they just don't want to have to use modern fertilizer because they feel like it's just destroying the land. And it's a collection of those kinds of people. And there's more of those happening now all over America, where people are just getting together and being like, I'm not afraid. And I haven't been for a while. And I'm waking up and I'm not afraid. And that's because I don't have to be, because there's no point in being afraid. I'm not afraid. But I also want to do these things that I'm interested in to the greatest extent that they can be done. I don't just want to have a farm. I don't just want to have a garden. I don't just want to, and a lot of them, it's truly, they're interested in growing things. They're interested in cultivating land and doing these things that it's good and it's beneficial for you. And for goodness sakes, it was the first commandment God gave us. Be fruitful and multiply. Go out in this world. Be good caretakers of it. Be good stewards of it. Cultivate it. Go out and have kids and enjoy this world and be good stewards of it. And it's really cool to see people coming to that now, kind of full swing in the modern era. In America, we're having this kind of reawakening to the idea that it's like, well, wait a second, we should just, if we take care of the land, it'll take care of us. If we do these things, it'll be good regardless. And I don't know, I'm really happy to be part of this community now, because it's a really cool thing that it has evolved into.
To the best of my ability, we've kind of summed up the topic.
All right, folks, before we go, thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, feel free to leave a like, hit that follow button. If you are listening to this on Spotify, feel free to leave us a review. If you're listening to anywhere else, just feel free to drop a comment in the comment section below. Once again, we appreciate you, and check us out at riversidesurvival.com. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Love ya.